Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing before the Lomachenko-Walters fight. And as you guys can see, we're doing things a bit differently. Got the Xbox on, and I'm playing Fight Night Round 3. I know it's old, but don't judge me. So we're playing Fight Night Round 3. We're going to get into some boxing talk while we play Fight Night. I'll probably be Calvin Brock because that's my guy. Shout out to Calvin Brock, Charlotte. But we'll start with tonight's fight with Lomachenko and Nicholas Walters. It's going to be a good fight, You have Lomachenko, who many consider a top 5 fighter in the sport. Just a great technician. Probably use a better word for him. He's a great technician. He's fighting a guy in Walters who probably is going to present the toughest test of his career. Walters has flattened dudes. We don't call him the Axeman for nothing, so it should be a good fight. I made my predictions on this already. I think that Lomachenko is going to win, and I think the foot speed will be the difference. I just don't think that, Walters has enough. He has skill. There's no doubt about it. He definitely has skills. I even went as far as to saying, that he was, if I made a pound-for-pound top 15, a year ago, around this time, he'd probably be, 15. But I just think the skill for Lomachenko will begin to show the longer the fight goes on. But he still does have enough power to change the fight, so it should be a good one. We're going to fight Evander Holyfield. I'll be Calvin Brock. But anyway, whoever wins this fight, I feel they're either going to be on a pound-for-pound list or they're going to move up. I made the video earlier this week saying that, if Lomachenko does beat Walters, if he beats him convincingly, a knockout, or if he beats him, just outclasses him for 12 rounds, then I'm going to have to probably consider him. Not that I want to, but I'm going to have to, because in 8 fights to do what he's done, beat guys like Gary Russell. I thought he beat Toledo, but still, beat Gary Russell, go up and knock out Martinez. If he's able to then dominate a Nicholas Walters, then that in only 8 fights, that's going to be hard to argue against, But we'll see what happens. It should be a really, really good fight. Now, aside from that fight, because it's going to be a good one, and I'm pretty excited for it, there are other fights that I wanted to talk about that are going on in boxing. We have, actually the camera. We have next month. December is going to be an interesting month. December 10th, we're going to have Crawford versus John Molina, and I really haven't done too much coverage on that fight because really, to be honest, I'm not entirely excited for it, but it should be a decently competitive fight until the middle rounds kick in, because I think Crawford is going to destroy Molina. But that fight should be interesting too, because Molina's a guy that, although he's not the most skilled fighter in the world, he's someone who has always given people good fights. And Crawford, no disrespect to him, he fought Postal, he fought Lorme, and he's fought in Lundy at 140. All 3 of those guys are skilled in their own right, but I think Molina will probably present the biggest puncher he's fought. So I want to see how he deals with his power, if he's even able to evade most of his punches, because Molina's a slow, plodding fighter. He telegraphs a lot of his punches. So Crawford should be able to get out of the way of most of them. And I think he should be able to outclass him, but we just don't know. Molina's one of those guys that he's been counted out on a lot of different fights. He was counted out against Lundy, he was counted out against Mickey Bay, and he was able to win both those fights. So I don't want to completely count him out. And he is coming off of a very, very good win against Ruslan Provodnikov. Regardless if you feel like Ruslan was a shot fighter or not, I can't lie. I picked Ruslan to win that fight, and Molina proved me wrong. So who's to say that he can't do it this time? Although this is against a top 5 fighter, in my opinion, in boxing. So we'll see what happens with that. After that, though, I'd like to see Crawford fight the winner. I don't know who's going to win. Obviously, I think Granados is going to win, but I'm saying if Crawford wins that fight, then I want to see him fight the winner of Granados versus Broner, because I think either one of those guys is going to present an interesting challenge to him. A lot of people have been clamoring for him to fight Broner for the longest time. Some people even think that Broner is the guy to beat him. I don't necessarily think that, because Broner's conditioning is terrible and he fades in the middle rounds and latter parts of the fights. But if he's to fight Broner or Granados, I'd be okay with that. Should he get past Molina, he has to focus on that first. So we'll see what happens with that. As far as the Broner matchup, if he was to fight Broner, Broner is a good counter puncher, but I feel like Crawford would be too skilled for. Damn, I got countered. It's too skilled for Broner, just because like Broner's defense isn't the tightest. Broner's balance has declined in his last like 5 fights. He doesn't really punch on balance like he used to. And on top of that, Crawford can always change his punch angles because he fights from orthodox and southpaw stances. So like, it really doesn't matter whether it's Broner or not. I think the fact that he can fight both southpaw and orthodox effectively, it just presents a lot of challenges for whomever is fighting Crawford. Now, if he was to fight Granados, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, Crawford's going to stop Granados, and he's so much better than Granados. I don't really think people give Granados the credit he deserves. I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. But even against Granados, I think that'd probably be a good fight for him too, because Granados has a great conditioning. Granados is someone who's like, in his career, has always risen to the occasion, and he's fought up to the level of competition. He's never been a guy that's really ever fought down. So I'm not saying he'd do it on that night, but I wouldn't be like surprised if he did. So we'll see what happens, man. Boxing's crazy. But aside from the Crawford Molina fight, we're also gonna have the Anthony Joshua Eric Molina fight, which is gonna be interesting. Molina's a guy who's tough. He's not the most skilled heavyweight on the planet, but he fought Deontay Wilder last year, and he gave Wilder a pretty competitive fight. He even hurt him a couple times. I was a bit frustrated with him because he didn't really go for the kill, but it is what it is. So I'm interested to see what Molina does against Joshua. This will be a good measuring stick for Joshua because it's a common opponent that him and Wilder have, and we'll be able to kind of make our own assessments depending on what happens on who will win between Wilder and Joshua. Based on this, we kind of do that in boxing anyway. But Joshua, what I'm looking for from Joshua in that fight is simply this, because when you look at his last couple of opponents, look at Brazil, Charles Martin, and guys of that nature. Brazil and Martin they're not really that talented, and neither one of them had like incredible big fight experience like that. But Joshua did what he was supposed to do, and he got them out of there relatively quickly. So what I'm looking for with Molina is, can he finish Molina? Because Molina is a guy who was very competitive with Deontay Wilder last year. Molina is someone that for the most part, you would expect for him to give Joshua at least 4 to 5 very competitive rounds. And, after about the 3rd or the 4th round, I'm going to be interested to see if Joshua can finish him. And if he can finish him before the 5th round, then it's going to even further validate that Joshua's the real deal. I mean, I already think he's the real deal, but it's further validated. So that should be an interesting one. I know Wilder will be watching that one, so we'll see. And then, that win will open up a big 2017 for Joshua, because then, you're going to have him potentially fighting Klitschko, which was rumored. That should have happened. I was really excited when they announced, when certain reporters reported on it, but it didn't happen. It fell through. So I'm kind of pissed that it didn't happen, but it is what it is. And then there's the Luis Ortiz fight, which is now a very big possibility. Many people, myself included, do consider Luis Ortiz not the best heavyweight because he hasn't had a chance to prove himself yet, but the most skilled heavyweight on the planet. And we do know he just signed with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing, who also promotes Joshua. So that's a fight that could happen sometime late next year, and I'm going to be interested to see if that fight does happen. If Joshua can get Ortiz out of there, then, I mean, man, that's even more of credit to him. So Joshua, pretty much what I'm doing this Molina fight as is like the first veteran fighter, almost like the first veteran fighter he's really ever fought at the championship level in Molina. Not an A-level fighter, but still a good veteran that's been there with good competition. That will be a good barometer for him. So we'll see what happens. And 2017 should be a really big year for him. Aside from versus Molina, we're also going to have the other heavyweight fight, which was freaking Joseph Parker versus Andy Ruiz. And that one's going to be interesting as well, because we're going to see another test. We saw him against Carlos Takam, and Carlos Takam gave him a bunch of competitive rounds. We saw him against Dimitrenko. He got Dimitrenko out of there. Dimitrenko's a heavyweight veteran. So now he's fighting Andy Ruiz, right? Between those two. It's really, for both of them, it's their first chance to, validate themselves like, right? Because, like, Parker's fought some decent, like, veteran heavyweights, but they're not really, like, top guys. Ruiz has fought in the eyes of many, of what many would consider bums. But all the heavyweights that I've talked to who have sparred Ruiz, like even Evander Holyfield, has said that Ruiz is the real deal. Josh Dempsey, who has Fifth Street Gym, said that Ruiz is the real deal. I think Ruiz is a good heavyweight as well. I mean, so it should be a competitive fight. I'm expecting Parker to win, but it's not like I'm 100% confident in that, because I do think that if Ruiz can keep his weight down and he comes in really good shape, that he can make this a very competitive fight. But when you look at the attributes of both fighters, like Parker, for example, he's someone that, for the most part, has pretty much the advantages anywhere. He has advantages in speed. You'd probably give him, because of his speed, it'll be able to set up his power better than Ruiz. And we just don't know, like, as far as what kind of shape Ruiz is going to be. That's always been an issue for him. So I'm looking really forward to that one. And if Anthony Joshua can get the Wilder or Ortiz fight early in 2017, you guys already know the fight I've always talked about, and I even interviewed Shannon Briggs about this, and he wanted to see himself, is Joseph Parker versus Anthony Joshua. These are like two of the best young heavyweights. They get a lot of high praise from a lot of other heavyweights around the world, legends and just top fighters in general. And it'd be a great matchup. You have Parker with the speed, combinations, and toughness. You have Joshua with the unreal power and Olympic pedigree. So that's a fight that sometime in 2017 I really hope happens, and I'm taking it to Evander Holyfield right now. I'm boxing this dude's ears off, but yeah, that should be a good fight too. And then also in December we're gonna have Bernard Hopkins versus Joe Smith Jr. at the Forum, which I wish I could go to, because any of you guys know me at all. Anytime I pretty much talk about Bernard Hopkins, I gotta tell you guys that the first fight I ever watched, period, in my whole life, was Bernard Hopkins versus Felix Trinidad. And that's what made me a boxing fan. So it's going to be kind of sad seeing him around Ali, but it's definitely that time. He's freaking old. I think the fact that he's even still fighting at this competitive of a level speaks to how great he is. But as far as that fight goes, it's kind of like a movie. It's kind of like a movie, because Bernard's mad old. He's still fighting. He's kind of been able to defy the odds. And then you have Joe Smith Jr., who was a construction worker like 6 months ago, and he had the fight against Fanfara on PBC, where he was a massive underdog, and he was able to go in there against Fanfara and pretty much upset him and really set his career back, because Fanfara was on the fast track after he beat Chavez Jr. So for Joe Smith Jr., this is his chance to really take his career to another level, maybe quit his construction job, which would be pretty cool. I can kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Empathize with him, because I have a day job myself and I cannot wait to quit it. But yeah, it should be a good fight, because Joe Smith Jr. is a younger guy, he's a stronger guy, he's the fresher guy, and then you have Hopkins, who's definitely, as far as boxing IQ and ring smarts, he has the advantage in that department. So it's really again, it's youth versus experience, which are always cool fights. And I gotta give credit to Bernard Hopkins to be fighting someone at this age. Although he's not the most skilled fighter in the world, he's still. You guys saw what he did to Fanfara, who was a top-rated light heavyweight. So he's not a pushover. He's not really a pushover in that regard. So it is what it is. I gotta beat the crap out of Holyfield, guys. I'm landing some good body shots. I'm using my boy Calvin Brock, the boxing banker. Shout out to Calvin Brock. But yeah, man, December should be a really interesting month for boxing, no doubt. December is always a very fun time for the sport. But honestly, I can't lie. Like, although there are some good fights, it's usually like last December was a lot better than this December. But it is what it is. January is supposed to be good. We're gonna have two really good cards in January. One of them I'm actually considering going to, which is the first notable fight of the year, which is gonna be for the super middleweight titles. We're gonna have Badou Jack versus James DeGale, and that's a good fight, man. Badou Jack is someone that has improved immensely as a fighter over the years. He's a guy that at one point in his career was having draws with Alexander Brand, and then he's fighting good. He's beating some good opposition. He beat George Groves to win the title. He defended it against Anthony Durrell, I believe, and then he also fought it was Lucien Boutte. and he got a draw in that fight, but I thought he won. So Badou Jack has been one of the very few guys that, although I don't like him, and he's like a Mayweather, he's like one of the only good Mayweather fighters, he's still someone who's legitimized himself as a champion to some degree. So it's going to be a good fight. It's been a fight that's kind of long overdue because this fight should have already happened. I don't know what was the holdup. I think it was money because I saw a number of interviews with like Helen Yee. Shout out to Helen Yee. She does good interviews in Vegas. But Helen Yee is always there in the middle of the gym, and she interviewed Badou Jack, and he was making a big deal about the money situation. But I'm just glad it's happening now. I'm glad that they're finally getting this one done. And to be honest, in that particular fight, I'm probably going to have to go with DeGale. Although he didn't look that sharp his last fight when he fought Porky Medina. He's still, to me, the more skilled fighter. Like, and not just that, you know, Badou Jack has shown in a couple of his fights, like if you look at the Butte fight, Butte's an old guy. And had it been the younger Butte, and maybe if we were in the 15-round era, I think Butte probably would have got him out of there. But I think with him, he tends to fade later on in his fights, and so does DeGale. But the difference is going to be the fact that DeGale can lean on more of his. He has more skills to lean on than Badou Jack. Really, the only true shot at beating DeGale, in my opinion, is simply to land something meaningful early, like a knockdown, and then he's going to have to build up a sizable lead. I just don't see that happening. So it should be a good fight. I'm expecting a competitive fight, but I think James DeGale will take it like 8-4 or something like that. All right, so we're back. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but what I was saying was like, Golovkin, you know, move up and maybe challenge one of those guys because there's really nobody at 168 who wants to fight him. But either way, at 168, that's going to be a pretty good fight. But I got DeGale winning it. I just don't see that. I just don't think Badou Jack has enough tools. He's not bringing enough tools to the table to beat Golovkin in that particular. Not Golovkin. DeGale. I'm losing track, man. But anyway, aside from that, we're gonna have the Crawford and Leo Santa Cruz fight, which is like, it's gonna be a good fight. The first fight was really interesting. I was just watching it before I started playing Fight Night, but I'm not really that excited for it. Those guys are good fighters. The first fight was exciting, but like they just don't, for whatever reason, they just don't excite me. So that's whatever fight I think Frampton will win the rematch. Mikey Garcia is the other card, so that'll be a cool card to go to. I'm considering going to Vegas for that one too. On the 11th, my birthday, and I talked about this numerous times, we're going to have Granados versus Adrian Broner. Now, I've already told you guys, I made the video. I basically said that Adrian Granados is a matchup nightmare for Adrian Broner. And I said that because Adrian Granados, his conditioning is just like, it's levels above Adrian Broner, and he's going to fade later on in the fight. His only hope is to really land one of those like counter uppercuts and hurt Granados early, because if he doesn't do that, and he gets those middle rounds, those late rounds, I just don't see how he's going to beat Granados. But that should be a fun fight as well. And I know I'm talking and I'm not really like sounding too excited. I'm really focused on this match. Like I want to beat Evander Holyfield. He's hard to beat in this game. But 2017 gonna be a great year for boxing. But you know what? While I'm sitting here and I'm just talking and I'm just rambling, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic in boxing over the last couple months, or not months, week. Just say week. Ward versus Kovalev. All right, it's been a week since I really made any videos about this. I've been watching other people's videos. I've been checking out Precise Presenters' film study on that. You guys should go check it out if you haven't already. But like, as far as that fight goes, I went back and I watched it, and I pretty much had it scored the same way. And I'm really having a hard time trying to figuring out how people are giving Ward so many rounds. Because look, although he did show some tenacity and he did show some toughness, okay, he gets credit for that, especially against a guy like Kovalev, who's such a killer in the ring. The fact of the matter is, for the majority of that fight, Andre Ward was not boxing within the rules, meaning that he was excessively clinching. He resulted to a lot of dirty tactics. If you always go back and you watch it, there were about 2 separate instances in that fight where he tried high school wrestling takedowns on freaking Sergey Kovalev, and he wasn't warned for it. The referee was very lenient. So I can't really see how you give him more than 4 rounds, and even 4 rounds, that could be generous. So he won a very controversial, disputed decision, and he needs to give Kovalev a rematch. It's as simple as that. If he doesn't give Kovalev a rematch, then he's going to be looked at he's going to be looked at least from me. I don't know about anybody else, but I know from me, if he doesn't at least give Kovalev a rematch, then he's going to be looked at for my eyes as one of the biggest chumps in the history of the sport, because Kovalev was the guy who was really putting everything on the line, to be the Russian fighter fighting the American gold medalist. And I know you guys are going to say, well, Ward wasn't fighting in Oakland, but I mean, Vegas ain't that far from Oakland, and that was a pretty pro Andre Ward crowd. So Kovalev really was fighting on most of the disadvantages. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say, well, Kovalev has been fighting in America for the majority of his career, which is very true. But Andre Ward, by his own admission, if you go watch the post-fight interviews that he did, even himself, he was saying Kovalev is the guy fighting on the road. He's the road warrior. So even Ward knows himself that in this case, because he's the American gold medalist, because he's signed to Rock Nation, because the fight's in Vegas, that he is, in this case, the house fighter. And he was going to get more of the benefit of the doubt. And we saw that in the purse. He got, it's very rare in boxing that you see the challenger get paid $3 million more than the champion. Yeah. What? Yeah. I'll do that. It's very rare that you see the challenger get paid more money than the champion, but it happened in that case. Ward got $5 million, Kovalev got $2 million, and then the judges were all American judges. They're fighting for world titles, but they're all American judges. And I already knew once, because I knew the fight. I knew it wasn't. In my opinion, I had thought Kovalev went 8-4, but I knew that in the eyes of many people that the fight was close because Ward was able to tire Kovalev out, not due to anything he was necessarily doing, like hurting him or nothing, but the clinching, leaning on him and wrestling him. If you do that long enough, you'll be able to tire any fighter out. So I knew he was going to get credit for that, and he did. And I knew the fight in the eyes of the judges was going to be close. So before he made the decision, I knew there was a huge chance that Ward would get a gift, and he did. So with that being said, Burt Clements is one of the judges. And as we all know, if you follow boxing, you know Burt Clements is one of the worst judges in the whole sport. And I knew once I saw that name that there was going to be some serious foolery going on. So, look at that. But anyway, Ward needs to give Kovalev a rematch. One, because a lot of people don't even think he won, and that should anger him as being the talented fighter that everybody makes him out to be. That should anger him into fighting Kovalev again and winning more convincingly, kind of like when Floyd Mayweather fought Castillo, and Castillo should have won the first fight, But then Floyd got the rematch, and then Floyd convincingly beats Castillo. So if he does something similar to that, then he'll be able to shut someone like me, who was a huge detractor of Andre Ward, right up because he didn't win that fight. And then after he does that, if he's able to beat a Kovalev in the rematch, and then after that, he should go after like an Adonis Stevenson and Arthur Beterbiev. I'm already on record, guys. I said this. If you guys go back and you watch my interview that I did when I was in LA after the Roman Gonzalez fight, I did an interview with Travis Gotti. Shout out to Travis Gotti. But I did an interview with Travis Gotti, and we were talking about that. And I told him, if Ward, and it's on camera, you can go look it up, if Ward beats, and without any robbery, no foolishness from the judges, if he beats Kovalev, and then he beats Adonis Stevenson or Arthur Beterbiev, if he beats any combination of Kovalev, Stevenson, and Beterbiev, I will personally put him number one. But it's got to be a clean, clear, and concise victory. It can't be like he has to clearly win. Now, if he gets robbed, it's one thing. I'll count it for him. But he didn't get robbed. He lost that fight. So he's got to give Kovalev the rematch, win convincingly, and then beat one of those two, and I'll put him number one. So it is what it is there. Aside from that, we also have David Haye and what's his name? Tony Bellew. And I said his name right this time, so you guys don't freaking start commenting that I got his name wrong, because I said his name wrong in the Shannon Briggs interview, and a lot of you guys were basically saying like, oh, Brandon doesn't know what he's talking about. But so I'm Bellew, not Bellew, but Bellew. I'm saying his name right this time. That fight got announced yesterday, and I found that pretty interesting because, thanks, Colin. But I found that pretty interesting because I'm not really sure what weight like that fight's gonna be at. Like, do they fight at heavyweight? Do they fight at cruiserweight? You know, these are the questions I've been asking myself. Like, what weight are they gonna fight at? And honestly, like, I also ask myself, like, okay, does he really gain? And if Bellew wins, what does he really gain? Because David Haye is not really anybody at heavyweight or cruiserweight. Like, he's not relevant to any one of those divisions. He has to kind of reprove himself. And for Bellew, he's the WBC champion at cruiserweight, so he should be more concerned with trying to like unify the division with like Mark Breedis or Dennis Ledbev or Alexander Usyk, like one of those guys. And he's fighting Haye. So a win against Haye does nothing for him because Haye hasn't been a cruiserweight in like 7 years. He's a great cruiserweight when he was a cruiserweight, but he hasn't been a cruiserweight in many, many years. So I don't get it, other than the fact that it's gonna make a lot of money. I mean, I guess that's what like makes the fight interesting, and the grudge match aspect of it. But I really don't get it. So it is what it is. There. I mean, I don't know, man. There's a lot of fights that I want to see. Like, to be honest, guys, like the division that gets a lot of credit from American boxing media, but I don't feel it's as good as a lot of the American boxing media makes it out to be, is the junior middleweight division, being 154 pounds, with Arizona Lara, Jamal Charlo, Vance Monterosin, Demetrius Andrade, Julian Williams. Like, it's a cool little division. There's definitely some talent in there. But, like, to be honest, and this is just my personal opinion, that division is not going to be too exciting to me until Kell Brook gets there, because and I'll tell you why. Because I think Kell Brook brings interesting dimensions to that division, because there's a lot of guys in that division who are punchers, and there's a lot of guys in that division who are boxers. But there aren't guys in that division who have like a boxer-puncher style. So Kell Brook being in that division is going to bring a lot more intriguing matchups to the table. And to be honest, I've said this many times, I think once Kell Brook gets to 154, whenever that is, he's going to be a serious problem. I think he beats a lot of the top guys at 154 right now. I think he beat both the Charlos. He would beat Lara. He would beat pretty much anybody except like Andrade and Julian Williams. I think those are the only two guys that give him a hard time. But other than that, I think he's got a really good chance to dominate that division, the way I see it. But as you guys know, Kell Brook said that he's supposed to come back to welterweight, so he's going to fight his mandatory in Errol Spence. A lot of you guys thought that Kell Brook was a punk, and he's pretty much doing everything you guys said he wouldn't do, which is fight Errol Spence. And in that fight, I think Earl is going to be at in for a real tough time because, look, I'm a huge Errol Spence fan. I interviewed him. I met him in April. I was at his fight in April. But when you look at the kind of guys Errol Spence has fought, like when you look at Chris Algieri, you look at Leonard Bundu, look at all of these different guys he's fought, he's yet to fight a guy who can punch, who has equal size, who has any sort of power. We don't know how Errol Spence reacts to power. And I talked to a lot of guys, like I talked to dudes in different gyms across the country, and they tell me like, well, Errol Spence has better defense than you think, but you should be a little go a little bit easier on Errol with his defense. But I'm like, nah, like show me on fight night that you have great defense. He hasn't had to really show it because the guys he's fighting, he just walk through all their punches and dig to the damn body. And you go back and you look at the Alejandro Barrera fight. Barrera's like a D-class fighter, and Errol was getting countered by like uppercuts like multiple times. And I think in a fight against Kell Brook, a guy with that speed, with that power, with that boxing ability, it would be the difference in that fight. And I got Kell Brook winning a unanimous decision over Errol Spence. And honestly, I don't know how Errol's chin is, so who knows, man? He catches him with the right shot, he might get him out of there. So we'll see, man. That to me, that's like the fight at welterweight, like Errol Spence versus Kell Brook. I really want to see that fight, like really bad, and I'm getting in. I'm gonna stop Holyfield in a minute, but welterweight should be fun. I think like the two guys, it's weird when you look at the welterweight division. The two guys who are basically like both of them, they're like the forgotten welterweights. And the guys we're speaking about are like Timothy Bradley and Amir Khan. Now we'll start with Bradley. Bradley's had I'm pretty sure he's only fought Pacquiao this year because the Rio spot was last year. And, you know, he hasn't been very active. And I'm a big Timothy Bradley fan. Like, I want to see him fight all the top guys. In fact, when I heard the news of Arum and Al Haymon working together, one of the things I was really excited about was the fact that, you know, Timothy Bradley might get a chance to fight a Danny Garcia and Amir Khan and Errol Spence, one of these top guys at welterweight. And I feel like he beat most of the PBC welterweights. And like people forget like how great he is. And he's getting lost in the shuffle of all the hype of all the PBC welterweights. So I want to see about Timothy Bradley. I hope Bob Arum, Top Rank, and the fact that Arum and Haymon are now working together. You saw like the Crawford and Molina fight got done. So hopefully that fight, one of the PBC fighters will step up and fight Timothy Bradley, and Al Haymon and Bob Arum can get that deal worked out. So yeah, I want to see Timothy Bradley back in the ring soon. Aside from that, you know, you have a guy like Amir Khan, who had a 2015 or 2016, I should say, that was very forgettable. He fought Canelo Alvarez. He got sparked in that fight, you know, got hurt really bad. Just like I'm about to hurt Holyfield really bad, like I'm piecing up with his jab. But, you know, Amir Khan, he's someone with a lot of options, you know, but like they're not options where he's in favor. Like he's still a WBC mandatory, but he's got to wait because Danny Garcia has a fight with Keith Thurman in March. So whoever wins that fight, he'll probably be trying to get a fight with them. And Holyfield's piecing up with his jab. But then aside from that, you know, the Kell Brook fight's there. But like these are both options where like Amir Khan doesn't have too much like leverage. So Amir Khan's career is kind of in a weird place. I think he should really take the time to reevaluate his style of fighting and even like who his team is. Like I know Virgil Hunter's his trainer, but I told you guys this before. Virgil's really messed up his style. Like Amir Khan has actually reverted into the habit, like not reverted, but he's gotten more into the habit of exchanging with his chin up since he's gotten with Virgil Hunter. And I remember, if you guys remember, when Amir Khan went on the 3-fight win streak, he beat like Devin Alexander and Chris Algieri and all these guys. You know, everybody was like, "Oh, Khan has been reborn under Virgil Hunter," and I was like, "Nah, he hasn't been necessarily reborn under Virgil Hunter. He's gotten the right fights against the right opponents, and he's looked good. And even in the Algieri fight, he didn't look that damn sharp. So I think if I was Khan, I would try to get with a coach or a trainer that can work with him from the ground up and try to correct some of these mistakes. Like I would look at like a Nazim Richardson, a John David Jackson, guys that, you know, could really make him better as a fighter. And, the thing with Khan is he has a lot of speed. He's got good foot movement. He's got ridiculously fast hands. But the thing I feel like maybe he might even realize himself is that, like, if he had good defense, right, it's kind of like basketball. If you look at a team like the Golden State Warriors, like last year or even the championship, what made them like really great, but nobody wanted to talk about it, was like the fact that they had one of the top defenses in the league. And because they had one of the top defenses in the NBA, when they would get their stops and they would get on run out, and when they would go on the little runouts, they could get wide open 3-pointers and they could play to their strengths. If Khan had sound defense, like if he could actually like block and parry shots, then Khan would be a guy that could set up his speed, set up his 1-2s a lot more effectively than just like exchanging with his, chin up and just going for it, without having any sort of defense. So Khan needs to get with somebody who can teach him basic defensive boxing fundamentals. Because I feel like, maybe I guess once you bake a cake, it's a cake, or once a fighter is a fighter, that's a style. But, maybe someone can work with him from the ground up and fix some of the mistakes that he's been making in his career defensively so often. So I think if I were him, the guys would be Nazim Richardson and John David Jackson. Now that's what it is there. Also in the welterweight division, we have Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia, which I'm very excited for. Like I actually think that that's going to be a hell of a fight. That'll probably be one of the first fights I go to next year. I'm not really sure if I'm going to go to any fights in the first couple months, but I want to. But that fight's interesting to me because you look at Keith Thurman, right? Keith Thurman's a guy who a lot of people are high on. Some people like myself are not as high on him as they once used to be. But Keith Thurman is a boxer puncher. And that's the style that I've always said, when I've criticized DSG, that's the style that I've always said I wanted to see him in there with. And finally, we're going to see him in there with a boxer puncher type of fighter. So my thing with DSG is he's shown the ability throughout his career to neutralize a lot of his opponents. Even though his face swells up easily, like in the Herrera fight, he's done a good job of neutralizing a lot of his opponents and making them fight at his pace, which is why you're able to see DSG like set up so many counter shots. While you're being able to see him fight in spurts. That's actually the mark of neutralizing an opponent. When you can fight in spurts, that's you neutralizing an opponent, and his power and his timing keeps a lot of his opponents honest. So my thing is this: if Keith in the past has already shown the ability to get hit with a lot of shots, then can DSG, keep the fight at his tempo to where Keith Thurman is falling into traps to where he's countering. And to be honest, I think, as much crap as I give DSG, Keith Thurman has a bad habit of not being mentally disciplined. And I think early in that fight, he's going to be someone who, like, early on, he's going to be trying to go for the knockout. He's going to try to get Danny's respect. And it's going to cost him because I think he's going to get hit with some counters, and Danny's power is going to keep him honest. And I just see DSG beating him. Now, I could be very wrong. It's happened before. Probably will happen again. But, yeah, it's going to be a good fight. And in the winner of that fight, I would like to see fight Amir Khan. And if not Amir Khan, the winner of Earl Spence Kell Brooks. So we'll see what happens with that. The welterweight division is pretty interesting. But you know what I want to talk about, guys? Because this is actually an interesting topic. Another thing I want to talk about is this. Because I'm playing Fight Night right now. I'm fighting with Calvin Brock. Right now, let's see these scorecards. Because I've been fighting a really patient fight. Right now, I've landed 525 jabs or punches out of 875. I'm up on the card, so they better not rob me. But basically, when we look at boxing, right, especially in America, and I want to talk about the state of American boxing right now, because that's a pretty interesting topic, because war got the decision, and a lot of people are now talking about the American boxing establishment and how it's going to be hard for certain fighters, other countries to get decisions. But what I wanted to talk about was this. Boxing in America has been relegated to a niche sport. And that's for a number of reasons. But I would say one of the top 3 reasons it has is because when you look at the heavyweight division over the last 10 years, it's been dominated and, been held hostage by foreigners, guys like Vladimir Klitschko, guys like, Tyson Fury, who held the title very briefly. And even now, when we look at the landscape, the guys that are at the top are foreigners, guys like Anthony Joshua, guys like Joseph Parker. So when you look at the landscape, right, of American heavyweights, who are the American heavyweights that you look at and you say, well, that guy could beat Joshua, or that guy could beat Joseph Parker, and that guy could be a champion and be a champion for a long time? In my opinion, to be honest with you guys, there's only a couple of guys that I think could do that. One, actually, to be honest, only one, and it's not Deontay Wilder. I don't think Deontay Wilder could beat any one of the top guys. He's going to have to actually prove that to me at some point, that he can do that. But when I look at the landscape of American fighters, like, ironically, the only guy I think could beat one of the top guys, but I'm not talking like right now. I'm talking about like maybe like 4, 5, 6 years from now, not like 2, 3 years from now, when they get more fights under the belt and more experience. The guys I'm talking about is like maybe like a Jarrell Miller, right? And now look, I know a lot of you guys, the 5 of you that are listening to this, or 6 of you, shout out to you guys that are listening to this, might say, well, how could Jarrell Miller beat one of the top heavyweights? And I'm gonna tell you guys this. I'm not saying he could beat one of the top heavyweights right now, because right now he's just not battle tested enough. He doesn't have enough experience. His weight isn't on point enough. But when you look at what he brings to the table, right? Because I've seen him spar, I've seen him train, I've seen him fight on TV numerous times. Jarrell Miller, at his size, he brings size to the table. He's definitely big enough to compete with the top heavyweights. That's number one. Number two, Jarrell Miller has footwork. Moves very, very well for his size, which I don't think is something a lot of people are talking about right now. Jarrell Miller, at his size, is someone that gets around the ring really well, and he's one of those guys that it takes a while to warm up, so he might give away a couple rounds, but once he's warmed up, he's pretty good. Take that, Holyfield. So you give him about 4 or 5 fights. I feel like you build him up properly. If Greg Cohen Promotions is able to build Jarrell Miller up properly and get on the right fights versus the right opposition, and he's able to keep his weight down and he's getting more experience, I feel like Jarrell Miller could be at some point, not now, but I'm saying with more experience, he could beat Deontay Wilder, because his ability to box, number one, move, number two, and then 3, bully his opponents due to his weight and his strength. That's what's going to make him and separate him from a lot of heavyweights. And in my opinion, as far as the current landscape of American heavyweights, like, that's the only guy I could see becoming a champion and holding it for like a good amount of time. That's really it. Outside of that, the American heavyweight pool is very thin. There's guys who are in the very early stages, like Cassius Chaney, who Mr. Boxing Today put me onto. But Cassius Chaney, we're still learning about him. But even him at some point, I think, could be a problem. But Jarrell Miller, as right now, as guys who are either at the top level or inching close to the top level, I think Cassius Chaney is Jarrell Miller is the only one that could become a champion. Other guys, I don't think so right now. So that's what it is. And right now we're going into the 10th round. This is the final round on fight night. So I got to give Holyfield hell here. He's a hard guy to beat. What else is going on in boxing that we haven't talked about already? You know what? We'll talk about the smaller guys. I've been talking about the bigger guys. Let's talk about the smaller guys. We'll talk about the small weight classes without talking about Roman Gonzalez. So if you guys look at the 115-pound division, which in my opinion is the most stacked division in all boxing, right? You have a lot of good fighters. You have obviously Roman, Carlos Cuadras. You have Naya Inoue, and that's like the big 4 in that division. And you have a guy like Luis Concepcion, Luis Nery. But the big 4 in that division, for the most part, are the guys I named. So my thing is this: there's some great matchups to be made in that division, but HBO is gonna have to pay up. And credit to get on the canvas, Holyfield. But credit to this division, because there's a lot of talent in it. And like the one fight I really want to see more so than any one of the other fights, and ironically enough, you guys be surprised, it doesn't involve Roman Gonzalez. The fight I really want to see is Estrada versus Cuadras, and I'll tell you why. Because when you look at the landscape, right, of Mexican fighters today, to me, and this is my own personal opinion, I think Estrada is the most skilled Mexican boxer in the world today. And then I would say that after Estrada, Francisco Vargas is 2. And then after Vargas, Cuadras is 3. So to me, it'd be the matchup of 2 of the top Mexican fighters in the world today that have very, interesting styles. Cuadras maintains a high work rate, and he's always likes to fight toe-to-toe, but he can box as well. Estrada has like a Juan Manuel Marquez type of style where he's very, very reliant on his front foot and counter punching. Get on the canvas, Holyfield. So with that being said, I think it'd be a great fight, and not just that, it should be kind of like a tournament. That division should kind of like a tournament to where we see like the Mexican super fight between Cuadras and Estrada. The winner of that should fight the winner of Roman versus Inoue, and then the winner of the last fight is the undisputed king of the 115-pound division. And I've just scored a knockout over Evander Holyfield. Shout out to Calvin Brock. But yeah, that's what it should be in that weight class. There's a lot of great fights to be made there, and it would definitely weed out who's who in the division, and guys who I think are pound for pound, like Inoue, Estrada. They could validate themselves even more by actually fighting each other and beating each other. So that's what it is there. Rigo hasn't really fought in a while. In 2017, he's getting up there in age. So for Guillermo Rigondeaux, I want to see him fight like someone notable soon. I would like to see him fight. I don't know. I want to see him fight Carl Frampton, but Carl Frampton hasn't necessarily been too keen on fighting him. So hopefully we can get busy next year. And I know I'm going all over the place. You know what? I'm going to kind of stop talking for a second. We're going to get some boxing opinions from some boxing experts here. Oh, no? No? All right, no, never mind. Forget the boxing opinions. But, yeah, man, a lot of stuff going on in boxing. 2017 should be a very interesting year. I've pretty much been talking for a while, so I want to get back to the Lomachenko-Walters fight because I kind of just went on a big tangent. I think Lomachenko's going to win, and the difference in that fight is going to be the movement, the angles, the speed. And I think Walters is going to do a good job in the first round or so of evading Lomachenko's punches. But I think after the second round, after a couple of feel-out rounds, I'm pretty sure Lomachenko is going to find his distance, and he's going to be able to pretty much have his way with Walters. But Walters is a guy, man, to be honest with you guys. If you guys look at it, right, like, look, I know the guy can punch. I know he can crack. And I know that the dude can fight. But when you look at Walters, his power doesn't look like – it's not at its best unless he's fighting smaller guys. And I'll give you guys examples. Like, if you look at his power in the Donaire fight, the dude's landing, like, uppercuts and all these counter shots, and they're having a visible effect, and you can hear it on Donaire. But you didn't necessarily see that same – they didn't have that same effect against Jason Sosa. So my thing with him is his power comes from – he's not a guy who – Walters is good, but he's not a guy who's really good at punching on the move. And I think that might be his downfall, because to beat Lomachenko, you're gonna need to beat somebody who can punch on the move. So to me, while he can box a little bit, his really only chance, his really only chance is to like hit Lomachenko with something really, really hard. Now, if he can do that, then maybe he gets him out of there. But just the foot speed, his foot speed really isn't the fastest, and I think that's going to be his downfall in this fight. For Lomachenko, I think for him, he's going to be very mentally disciplined tonight. Like, he can't get into the type of mindset where basically, like, he wants to sit there and fight with him. The only way he's going to be able to sit there and fight with Walters for a prolonged period of time is if, and only if, he's already beaten and battered him to the body so much that Walters just doesn't have any steam on his legs, which he can't do, because you guys have seen before in other fights that Lomachenko does commit to the body. He goes to his body. His body punching is very, very good. I would consider him a top 5 body puncher in boxing. So with that being said, it's an interesting fight. I think the winner of this fight, like I said earlier, it's going to be either move up the pound for pound list or be on the pound for pound list. So it has a lot of implications as far as the landscape of who's the best fighter in boxing. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the fights. I'm actually gonna get off the hangout, but I hope you guys enjoyed just my ranting and whatnot. And hopefully we get some good fights in 2017. Hopefully moving forward, you guys just continue to subscribe to the channel, share this video, all that good stuff. I got some good interviews coming out. I actually have some interviews with notable boxers coming out in January already lined up. So 2017 is going to be a massive year for True School Sports. I'm going next level, and I hope you guys are along with me for the ride. Alex, want to give me opinions on boxing? No opinion. All right. Anyway, so yeah, you guys can comment on this video, anything about Lomachenko, Walters, or anything we talked about. Take the time to subscribe, and you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just kidding. So I'm going to get off, guys, and until next time, take care.